Good evening, everyone. Good evening, District 7. It is so good to see y'all in live and in living color. I'm Gretchen Barron, your Richland County Council member for District 7, and tonight we are gathering together in person. Some will be joining us virtually tonight so that we can talk about a development that is proposed to come to Hardscrabble Road. When taking office, one of the pledges that I made was that we would not only build in District 7, but we would build smartly in District 7. And what that means is that we build with the future in mind. What that means is that we have conversations like this with the developers, with the property owners, with the engineers to say, this is what's going on in our community, this is what's going to be built in our community. Is it a good fit? How does our community currently work? And then taking steps further to make sure that the impacts that building or development has on our schools, and on our roads, and even some of our existing infrastructure. So today we are going to be discussing, and I envision that we'll have many more of these conversations. Today we're talking about Hardscrabble Road. Next month we're going to be talking about Killian Road. But I pledge that we will continue to talk about this, because it's not enough for us to tell you what we think is good, but as your council member, I want to have conversations with you like we're having tonight, so that when I make my vote and when I govern with you, District 7, in mind. So tonight we do have Mr. Josh Rayburn, who is going to speak on behalf of the property owners. The property owners, and for those of you who live in the Hardscrabble Road area where the proposed development is to be built, Mr. Mosser, if you'll stay in, and I think it's important because unlike many other developments that we've had come to District 7, Mr. Mosser actually lives off of Hardscrabble and Wilson Boulevard. He is your neighbor. He is not a developer by trade, but he is a property owner, heir property owner that is looking to relinquish the property to further develop District 7. So Mr. Josh Rayburn is going to talk about the plan that they have in place, and then from there we are, if you're tuning in via YouTube or if you're tuning in via Facebook, please feel free to put your questions down in the comment section. We have staff that will be monitoring the questions, and we will have the opportunity at the end, for those of you who are in person, you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions. Keep in mind as we have this discussion that a lot of these conversations are preliminary. They are preliminary, so whereas developers do not have to host meetings like this and attend meetings like this, they are willing, Mr. Mosser and Mr. Rayburn has made a decision to come and speak to us. So if they say something to the effect, we're not sure just yet, that means that the plan has not been put in place. They're merely going now for rezoning, and they want to take their zoning from agriculture to residential, which will allow for multi-family homes, so single-family homes to be built in a community. So I want to just put that preface there, because this is just a beginning of a conversation. The layout that you'll see are all preliminary. If our zoning staff, as they go through this process, if the zoning staff says that they need to change something, or they need to add something or take something away, in order for that to take place, they have to do that in order for them to continue to build. So without further, please keep in mind, we'll have questions at the end, and then Miss Only will be able to assist us with those questions that are coming in from social media, YouTube, and our telephone line. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Josh Rayburn.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barron, for hosting this. Thank all of you for coming out. I think it's very good to see the engagement and involvement of the community, especially as it relates to developments in your neighborhood, in your backyard, and how it impacts your daily life. So my name is Josh Rabin. I am with Civil Engineering of Columbia. We are a civil engineering consulting firm that we work all over South Carolina and a little bit in North Carolina and Georgia. I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm a Midlands born and raised, so I'm local to the Midlands. But representing D.R. Horton, who is the proposed builder for this, and also have had conversations with Mr. Mosser, the owner, as well. I do apologize in advance that I think visually for you to look at tonight, but I did talk to Mr. Bryant Davis. He will have a copy of my slides that I'll be discussing first thing in the morning. And if you've signed in, then he'll be sure to get that to you for you to look at. And I'll have if you want to write down my email, is Josh, Josh, at cecola.com. Josh at cecola.com. I'm more than happy to provide that information to you as well. Just want to talk about the rezoning. We're requesting rezoning from RU to RSE, which is basically using the Richland County Open Space Code is an increase of about 40 units. So one of the things that I want to talk about to you tonight are the project goals, the due diligence that we do on projects like this. Talk about the traffic and the storm drain, which is what I imagine is going to be the two biggest concerns of the community. So I don't want to just say, we'll handle the traffic, we'll handle the storm drain. I really want to try my best to break that down for you tonight and help you understand exactly what that looks like and exactly what's going to go into mitigating your level of service on your roadways and on your waterways. Touch on erosion and sediment control, and then obviously there were some products that D.R. Horton was prepared to show to give you an idea of what the homes would look like. But again, those will be included in the slideshow that I'll provide to the county that'll be available tomorrow. So one of the project goals into this, what are D.R. Horton's goals? In the housing community, there is a massive shortage. South Carolina is a huge destination for a lot of people. You have millennials that are now purchasing homes that have always lived here. You have people moving from the Northeast, from the Midwest. You know, the Southeast is a booming area, and there is a huge housing shortage. Not building the houses is not meaning that is not stopping the people from coming. So one of the things that all builders are looking at doing right now is trying to replenish the demand. Typically, a 6-month supply is what that's kind of a good market average. Right now, we're at about a month, kind of industry-wide, at least in this MSA. So one of the goals for D.R. Horton is to help provide housing, replenish depleted inventory, meet the demands of growth, and also invest in Richland County, invest in District 7, invest in Keenan High School. The area here is unique, has a lot to offer, and they want to be a part of it. They want to be a good neighbor. They also want to do it the right way. They don't want to come in here, churn and burn and get out. They want to make sure that they leave a good reputation and a good legacy, because they're going to be all over the place. They want to stay in Columbia for a long time. As far as from a landowner standpoint, you know, Mr. Mosser and I have discussed this. You know, he's got land that it's time to sell, and the land's not going to be used for farming anymore. And Mr. Mosser is very interested in making sure that it's done the right way. The agreement in place with D.R. Horton, I don't know the full terms, but I do know that it is not the maximum value he could sell his land for. He's wanting to make sure it's developed in the right way. He's wanting to preserve existing ponds that are on there. He's wanting it developed. D.R. Horton has agreed to develop it using the open space code. There's 15 acres that D.R. Horton has agreed to set aside as a wish, as part of a wish from Mr. Mosser's father. That other builders that looked at it were not willing to do that, which is why he passed on them and went with D.R. Horton. And then of the remaining development the remaining land that's being developed by D.R. Horton, about 45% of that is untouched open space. So there's been a lot of effort put into, at least in the due diligence phase, of making sure that this is not just some blow it open and completely take everything down and completely leave a big hole in the ground. Water and sewer is available to the site. This site is located within the Economic Development Center corridor. So that means that where Hardscrabble is not necessarily one of the main intersections of interest, because there is not an exit on 77 right there, it does fall within that corridor, which means that the zoning that is being requested is actually less dense than what is in the Richland County Comp Plan. Again, another factor in Mr. Mosser and D.R. Horton trying to do this the right way, trying to make the development work for the seller, trying to make the development work for the developer, but also trying to make it work for the community. We've discussed the project with staff. We had preliminary meetings with staff before the Planning Commission. We went through the Planning Commission. We got a favorable vote there. And then we had discussions with Ms. Barron prior to the first council reading. And again, we definitely wanted to be here. I do apologize that Phil Bradley with D.R. Horton was unable to be here tonight. We actually had a scheduling conflict thinking that this meeting would be held tomorrow. But he does really want to engage and be a part of the community. So let's go ahead and touch on traffic analysis. One of the things that's going to happen for this development is 216 proposed units. We'll be coordinating with both DOT, the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and with the Richland County Engineering Department. And we'll study existing traffic patterns and volume and the project growth with and without the development. So the very first thing in the traffic count, the Institute of Traffic Engineers has a trip generation manual that based on the number of units that is going to go into that development, there's a linear regression equation that will tell us how many trips will be generated during the peak hour. And that's what all of the mitigation is based off of. So the traffic counts will literally sit on the corner and count cars as far as how the existing traffic patterns will go. And that will be done during school. We're not allowed to count until school starts to get the most complete picture of how traffic patterns work in this area. And you look at the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour. The AM peak hour is counted from 7 to 9, the AM, the PM is 4 to 6 PM. And then during that 2-hour block, it's broken down into 15-minute intervals. And the highest 4 consecutive intervals is considered the peak hour. And that's what goes into the traffic study to determine what kind of mitigation would be required for your traffic impact. And again, the trips that are generated from the trip generation manual based on the development will go into that as well. You'll also look at existing traffic data back up 4 or 5 years and calculate what the growth has been without this development. And then you will project that growth out 4 to 5 years, which would be the lifespan of this development. And you'll see what the growth, the natural growth would be without the development. And then you'll turn around and add the development trips to it. And that will tell you if this development will trigger any additional impacts than what was already going to be there. I tell you that just to say there's very specific items that go into the traffic study that we'll be looking for. The level of service of every intersection, has to maintain a certain threshold. So everything within that will be coordinated both with SCDOT. SCDOT has to agree. It's a negotiation of what intersections are studied. That will have to be agreed upon by SCDOT and approved. And then the study itself will have to be reviewed and approved by SCDOT. That would be done after the rezoning. That would be done before the site plans are approved. Before the project, so the traffic study will be part of the requirement that the county will want to see that and require that as part of the development. And if any off-site mitigation is included or is required, then that would go into the design plans as well. Whether or not a turn lane is required to, a left turn lane may be required to stop impeding traffic flow, or a right turn lane, not necessarily at the development. There may be improvements to Hardscrabble at Wilson Boulevard as a result of this. That's just, that would be derived. I don't want to speak too loosely on that, because that would be derived from whatever the study entails. But at the end of the day, I don't want you to, I didn't want to come in here and say, yeah, we'll do a traffic study and we'll abide by it. I really wanted to break down and explain what goes into that, what is looked at, and how detailed that has to be. Stormwater requirements. 2018, Richland County rewrote their land development manual and actually put in some more stringent stormwater requirements, which would actually be to the benefit of this project, not to the benefit of the community for this project. So one of the things we have to design for when we design stormwater is water quantity, water quality, the design storm, erosion and sediment control, and one of the new things that we have to do now is a downstream analysis. The county engineer will look at the area regionally downstream of the project and say, I want you to analyze all the way down to this spot. And that could be a mile downstream, that could be 3 miles downstream. That's up to the county engineer. And that they will require us to look at the global watershed and make sure that the development that we're proposing will not have any impacts, not only from the development itself, but downstream detrimental impacts to the community. For water quantity, you've got pre-post. We have to analyze the site, and in its pre-development conditions. When we develop the site, we have to put controls in, be it detention ponds, swales, other BMPs, which is short for best management practices, both for peak flow and for volume. We cannot exceed what it currently is doing right now. And then for water quality, we have to meet trapping efficiency. We have to meet pollutant removal requirements. That does not mean you will never see discolored water. When it rains and it churns up loose dirt, the water will change color. DHEC only requires 80% trapping efficiency. We obviously try to get a whole lot more than that, but it's just when you have fine silts, it will suspend and cause discoloration in the water, but that does not necessarily mean it's a sediment discharge. But again, just to reiterate, there are very stringent guidelines and design requirements to control that. The other thing with the size of this one, we actually have to design to the 25-year storm. You'll hear things like a 2-year storm, a 10-year storm. 2015, we all heard the 1,000-year storm. All that is a frequency of, it's not necessarily once in every 10 years that storm's going to happen. It's a 2% chance that storm's going to happen in any year. But the 10-year is the DHEC standard. Richland County, for development of this size, it's greater than 40 acres. We will have to design to the 25-year storm. And what that means is we have to design for another inch of rain over 24 hours. So if the 10-year storm is a 5-inch storm over 24 hours, we now have to design to a 6.4-year storm over 24 hours to meet the 25-year storm. That's just another level of protection that the county has put in place to protect their surrounding communities when we put in these developments. BMPs, during construction, that's a whole nother ball game that we deal with. Is you have your pre-development, your post-development. You're talking about your runoff. Well, when it's in construction and you have all this dirt moving, how do we make sure that we control that on site and not have these washouts where a lot of sediment gets downstream? There are 3 phases to that. The initial disturbance plan, you go in and you put in all of your perimeter controls, you put in your pond, and all of that has to be in place, functioning before you can proceed to the next step. The next step is when you go in and start putting in all of your other infrastructure. All that is to basically provide protection so that what's supposed to collect the water is actually in place before we start disturbing a bunch of other areas. And then at the end, you have to stabilize everything with either matting or grassing and get it stabilized as soon as possible. Again, I talked about the downstream analysis. That's something that both Lexington County and Richland County have recently put into their standards. It's a great thing for the community, as it provides a lot of protection. Just showing that looking at everything and making sure that you're meeting your requirements on site, but you're not causing detrimental impacts downstream. And so again, the goal for this development is to be developed in phases. So all of it, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. 20 years ago, the Lake Elizabeth Neighborhood Association went to the Corps of Engineers about the silt runoff from the construction off Killian Road, and they denied them, the help. So what are we looking at in another 15 years?
As far as how, I can't speak to. For this development, we have, there are 2 ponds on site that we are not planning to touch or impact at all. We don't want to utilize them. We're actually providing a 50-foot buffer from them. And we are proposing 2 new detention ponds for the sole purpose of collecting the silt during construction. But the other thing is we will have third-party erosion control inspections done weekly at a minimum. Or if there's a huge rain event, you have to go in within 24 hours after the rain event. And then immediately, if there's an off-site impact, if there's a breach in a perimeter silt fence where there's sediment that's getting off of site, then you immediately trigger a cleanup action plan with the contractor. The engineer will get involved, the developer will get involved, the contractor will obviously be involved, as well as the county. And so the idea is to learn from those issues and make sure that we do everything in our power to control that from even getting to Lake Elizabeth. So again, you're looking at a 50 some odd acres of development. Yes, ma'am.
I am?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay, I forgive you. Have you talked with the highway department about widening the highway, this part of the infrastructure, prior to building any homes, or even considering building any homes?
The highway of Hardscrabble Road?
Yeah, it's 2.4 miles from Farrell Road to Wilson Boulevard. Okay, there are 5 subdivisions there, 2 churches, 4 businesses. Okay, and I don't know how many homes in each of those subdivisions. Okay, but certainly before you consider building homes there, first thing you need to do is consider widening the road.
Yes, sir. And to Councilwoman Barron's point, at this stage, we're very preliminary. We're requesting a rezoning of the property. But to your point, like I mentioned on the traffic study, we will have to coordinate with DOT, and they will have to approve the study area. And if there is concerns about existing subdivisions and existing businesses and churches and traffic impacts to that, they will require us to consider that in the traffic study and study those traffic patterns and those traffic impacts. So those will be included if DOT deems it necessary. But that is the step that we do once we are actually, looking at designing the project.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
But if we agree, well, if this body agrees to the zoning change, we sort of stuck, right? We at your mercy after everybody agrees and county council agrees to the zoning change. Ms. Barron?
So to be clear, what tonight's meeting is about, tonight's meeting is to provide you with information. And I don't know any other way to say it, so I'm going to apologize right now in case it comes off the wrong way. You are going to give me input, and then I'm the one that votes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how it works. And so tonight, whether with the traffic studies and things of that nature, ideally we want Hardscrabble to be finished already. If we really want to be frank about it, it's been a very long time, and we could use on this side of Hardscrabble some widening as well. But when it comes to development, if SCDOT says, hey, you want to build this subdivision, then in order for you to build this subdivision, you have to do these things to meet to be able to build. So whether it's a turning lane, widening, those things like that, we're not necessarily stuck. We're just, it's left up to the developers. If they want to develop, there is a plan that they have to adhere to in order to develop. And some of that does include widening roads, turning lanes, and things of that nature that would address some of the issues. I would love for us to look at, widening roads and things like that before, but when we think about it, when we have development taking place, we have big trucks coming in and they're tearing up our roads already. So, that's usually why they do it after the fact. So we are just really gathering our information and making an informed decision and keeping an open mind. And this is one thing that I've said in many of our meetings. It's not a matter that development is coming to District 7. It's not a matter that it's coming. It's not a matter of if it's coming. It's a matter of when and how. So because of that, we know it's when and how. We just need to continue to have conversations like this and then build very smartly and build with our future in mind.
And may I say something else? I do understand what you're saying. So current residents, what he's talking about.
Sure.
Okay? That's just what I'm saying. I didn't know if you were talking about.
Yeah, I understood. I did understand. No. I do understand that, because that's what it feels like, and that's why I decided to have these meetings, so that you feel a part of it, because you've been here, you've been in that community for however long you've lived there. I worked on a project with Lake Elizabeth, and it was very intense. And we really realized that, hey, this might not be the best development for our community. And many of them are sitting here tonight, and to know that we're going to dig through to make sure that if D.H. Horton is building in District 7, that, we're just not going to vote and go away. We're going to spend a little time with them to make sure it's what we need. We'll take these questions, and then we'll allow Mr. Rayburn to continue. Ma'am?
I've lived on 83 acres on Idle Lane for 18 years. Traffic patterns change consistently over time. With going back to what no one was saying back there with 5 subdivisions, I've been there at a time when these things have been built, with the exception of Lake Elizabeth. It has gotten terrible, it has gotten worse, and quite frankly, what I think is being asked of us, and what I'm asking of you, is how are we supposed to put our trust in the Department of Transportation? Like, just say, yeah, go ahead and rezone it. And then put the trust in the Department of Transportation to make a plan. And the plan right now is pretty much non-existent. I work in Fairfield County to get off of Wilson Boulevard to turn on the Hardscrabble Road, coming home at night, is basically an active, just an active impossibility. And I know the people who are here who do that, the neighbors have figured out a way to let people in and out, which is,
I'm one of them.
Yeah, okay, so you're one of them. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And with the building of Jackson Place, the traffic is exponentially increased. And so to say, and I believe, and I know what you're saying, we're supposed to put our trust in when we do this stuff. Like, it's rezoned, and whether D.R. Horton decides to abide by it or not, there'll be somebody else later on down the line. Once it's rezoned, it's rezoned.
Absolutely.
And we are stuck with the rezone.
Yes.
Once we come back and ask for it to be rezoned again, which from what you're saying, and decorated District County, then it's pretty much an exercise of utility. Once we jump over the suit, we're there. And so with the traffic plan, I don't understand how a DOT is going to say put a turn lane. There's so many curves. And I understand what you're saying about the counting the traffic. That doesn't take into account the turns. It's dangerous just trying to get it out of lane. And I just want you to know that. And that's why I have a real big concern, because I looked at the map of, and with all of this, I understand what you're saying. And it sounds like you're doing a local job and trying to mitigate whatever it is. But the fact is that when you look at that plat, the only ingress and egress is Hardscrabble. There is no, the property doesn't back up to any other street. So unless you build a bridge over something, if it's an easement or some sort of out besides the Hardscrabble Road, all of those, if you say 216 units, let's say 300 cars, and that's probably a pretty generous estimate, if not on the conservative side. Coming, all of those cars coming out on the Hardscrabble Road, it's probably twice in and out. And for, so when we start to think about rezoning, and then we start to say, let's just do that
Well, and I want to, and I don't want us to get stuck here, but I will say that this is a situation where for many years, District 7, we did not come together to have any conversation. And so we're having a conversation, and as your elected official, it's not that I'm hoping that you will put your trust in SCDOT as much as I do me to continue this process on down the road.
Right, and if you live there, I just want you to hear what I'm saying. That's all it is, and I don't think I'm alone in the way of it. This is the massive concern. Stormwater, yes, I believe that's a concern. But traffic, I know is already a problem, and I can't imagine it's going to make it worse.
Understood. And so to that point, I'll take these two gentlemen's hands, and then we'll allow Mr. Rabin to finish. But I do, another point that I want to make, and that is that we're talking 216 homes. They won't show up overnight. There is a phased process. And the great thing that I'm learning about phased process, when you have a phased process, whereas there is, and I think you're going to talk about the phases. So when he talks about there's a phased process, so we automatically just go to voila, 216 homes. But it is a process of which is have been on council almost 7 months. I feel like the thing that I talk about the most is rezoning. Why? District 7 is that district, and I've had to learn a lot. And what this process, this conversation is going to, and I'll use this word loosely, a lot nicer than some of the other ones, because it's thoughtful. It is thoughtful, and it might not mean a whole lot to you all, but I think that in this day and age, just being nice, it goes a long way, and you have developers that are being thoughtful about the community. So I hear, because I take that same way. I took that way to come here. So I understand, and I'm very grateful to all of y'all that let me in and cut and go on home.
It's nice and thoughtful to have a conversation with you prior to deciding that you're done with this healthy thing for that area. And when you think about providing the Hardscrabble, it's also considered a bridge that comes over the intersection, which presents a real big impossibility in terms of widening. And it was not impossible, but it's extremely difficult and unlikely that the Department of Transportation is going to widen a bridge without putting on and off ramp, which again would be considerably. So that's
Point taken, and we'll allow the experts to be experts and to do that. That probably won't happen. Now, I've asked them to, as far as the traffic study, I have asked for that already. The traffic study and environmental study, I've asked for that prior to my taking a vote. I did ask that. Yes, sir.
My question relates to why the county staff advised against it in the one. And you voted unanimously to approve the county. What is the difference of opinion? And secondly, I'd like a clear definition of what you mean on residential single family, because there's 3 levels. And when I hear 15 acres set aside, we leave 85 acres on which 216 units are required. That sounds identical rather than low. Please define what the rezoning is going to consist of and what it leads.
Yes, sir.
Can we talk about it?
Yes, sir. So I'll answer to the council's decision. And if you have the capability, go to YouTube, our YouTube page at Richland County. And I made a statement, and our staff member is here from Planning and Zoning, and Mr. Price, you're welcome to come forward and make any comments you'd like to make. But the staff did recommend for it not to be approved. The commission or the Planning Commission approved it. I, in return, did some research to find out that when I did my research, our staff said, hey, this is an area is zoned for industrial community. So we're already at a conflict. you know, and it says that this type of land should not be used for residential. Well, if that is the case, how is Jasmine's place functional if that is the case? And all the homes and many of you that live on Hardscrabble, that means now that those homes should not be either. My interpretation of what has happened is we have what we call a comprehensive plan, and it's for development. My interpretation is that now that Richland County is growing as fast as it is, the plan is now in contradiction to what really takes place. And that plan is revised over a period of time. It's set forward. And Mr. Price, if you want to come forward, you're welcome to speak even further to this issue, to the comp plan. That's exactly what they advised against it based upon the comp plan. And Mr. Price was a part of that.
And y'all asking for, you're asking for high density?
No, they're not asking for high density.
Yes.
So, Mr. Price, to be clear, if you will speak to why the staff recommended against it, and then the density level that is being requested.
Yes. Okay. So again, as stated by Councilwoman Barron, staff makes their recommendation based on a comprehensive plan, which was adopted by council, and kind of what we do is kind of a reminder of what this area was designated for. The subject property is designated as Economic Development Corridor, which primarily asks for industrial type uses, maybe heavier commercial. And they're correct that during the Planning Commission's review of this request, they determined that this is probably not an appropriate area, and especially because of the limited access for industrial uses to take place. But another part of the comprehensive plan for the Economic Development Corridor is it does allow as secondary uses residential uses, which primarily are more workforce type housing, higher density housing. So one of the reasons why staff recommended this approval of it was, one, because of the zoning request was not in compliance with the primary use, which was for industrial type uses, but also because the actual zoning was not high enough from a density standpoint.
So to be, that's
Yes,
huge.
yes, right.
That's huge. What it says is they denied it because the developers were not going to build enough homes. So whereas it's defined as high density areas, the developers are not developing at a high density area. They're developing at a lower density versus a Jasmine Place or another subdivision that's on down the road that's higher density.
Yeah.
What is the zoning that you're asking for today?
Yeah, I can answer. So what they're asking for is residential single-family estate. So we have a number of zoning designations to start with residential single-family. So in this particular case, the estate zoning allows for 2.2 units per acre. Typically 20,000 square foot lots, but that can be changed with the application of open space provision of the code, but the density doesn't necessarily change. In comparison, the 2.2 unit per acre compared to Jasmine Place, which is on residential single family medium density, which is 5.12 units per acre. So as Councilwoman was stating, what would have been recommended by staff of a higher density, the applicant, and I believe Councilwoman Councilwoman Barron don't feel that that's appropriate, and what the request is for a lower density than what the comprehensive plan is requesting.
What is the upside for the people that live there? You have a lot of traffic, more traffic, and higher taxes. And the water is liable to turn around during the course of what, 4 years? What is the upside for the people that live there?
Well, we know that you want me to give you a silver lining, and it's really, this is community development. This is community development, and I'm sure many of you, when you move to your home, and I had this conversation with Lake Elizabeth, when you move to your home 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you never would imagine where we are right now. We didn't, although we've been the capital county for a very long time, we didn't imagine growth to take place the way it has over the past years. Who would have thought that, you know, Wilson Boulevard and up to Blythewood would be the growing, booming area? I know 25 years ago when I moved here, I didn't think that. So I don't have a silver lining. I don't have a magic wand to make it great for you. Besides, you know, you're going to get some new neighbors. Some you might like, some you may not. And I'm not making light of the situation. It's just, it's development. And
There is no upside.
well, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, you know, it just depends on how you look at it from that point. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is to allow Mr. Rayburn to finish his presentation. We'll take some more questions. And we do, those of you who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, you're welcome to put your questions in the comment section. We already have some coming in. And so we want to make sure that we allow for enough time for the presentation and to address your concerns.
Thank you, and I'll wrap up here very shortly. But just to discuss a little bit more about the phase plan, we're not, to Mr. Price's point, you know, the zoning is RSE, which is the 20,000 square foot, 2.2 units per acre. The application of the open space code does not give you any more density, but it allows you to shrink the footprint of the development. And what that does is make the project more economically feasible from a construction cost standpoint. Oh, and you have to give up, like I said here, it's, I forget the exact, we're above the open space threshold. I think it's like 25%, but we're at 45% open space on this. And basically the zoning, to basically take the density that you could spread out over a large area and cluster it to help with construction costs. There are limits on how much land you can disturb at one time. So that's why these things are usually developed in phases. So phase one would typically be your first 60 lots. And then once those are going, then you would go to the next one once the first 60 are stabilized. There is an amenity plan for this, clubhouse and pool. And again, like I said, some proposed bonds to help with runoff. And I apologize for the alarm with the dirty water. All I'm trying to do is say, you know, there is that the chances of that can happen, but we work with D.R. Horton a lot. We work with Mr. Price at the county a lot, and I've been doing this for 15 years. Our company's been doing it since 1974. We do everything in our power to protect downstream properties, to protect the adjacent property owners, to protect the community as a whole. The remaining slides I have are copies of the proposed products that D.R. Horton was looking to build. And again, like I said,
Size of the homes.
So price points, I'm gonna have to defer to D.R. Horton on that, but I will say you've got one that's 2,000 square feet, that's two-story, a one-story, 1,764 square feet, two-story, 2,500 square feet, another two-story, 2,600 square feet, 2,600 square feet, and 1,600 square feet. So your price points are probably going to be in the high ones to low to mid twos. But again, that's pure speculation. I would have to completely defer to a D.R. Horton on that, specifically on the price point. So like I said, just to kind of recap my presentation, and then we'll get into the questions, because that's why we're here. You know, the project goals, we want to invest in District 7. We don't want somebody else we don't want development to go somewhere where people are still using Hardscrabble Road as cut-throughs and what have you, where we might have an opportunity to maybe not fix it, but maybe help it a little bit on the roadways. You've got who is doing everything that they can to put the best interest of the community at heart. We want to really focus on fixing the traffic or studying the traffic to make sure that we don't negatively impact what's already a bad situation, and possibly maybe help it get better. Again, we'll handle the storm drain, erosion and sediment control. We want to protect downstream, adjacent. We want to make sure that this is something that'll enhance the community, not bring it down. And then again, I went through the products of what D.R. Horton is looking to put in. And I think that would be a good enhancement for the community as well, something to build upon and continue to grow with. And again, I'm Barron to come speak with you. I am here for questions that you may have tonight. And if you think of any after tonight, again, I told you my email address, and I'll be happy to give it to you again. With that, I will hand it to you, and we will answer questions.
Okay, so we have some questions. We're going to take a couple of questions from online, and then we'll open up. So we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit. Michelle, so if you'll read the first question.
Yes, ma'am. The first one is from Gerald McKee. It's, what will you do to protect the rights of those currently living in the area?
To that point, to protect as far as the property rights, we have an obligation as engineers. Our first obligation in our code of ethics is to protect the health and safety of the public. So the design of this project will be to not have any adverse impact with runoff, with sediment, with anything to any adjacent or downstream property owners. It can be a difficult conversation. The property owner of this property, has a right to sell, and they're doing their best to sell it. Again, as I mentioned before, they could sell for more, but they're trying to do this as best as possible with a developer who's willing to set aside 15 acres. That was a request, a legacy request, as well as go for a zoning that just enough, one-up zoning in order to make the project feasible, and not necessarily looking for the maximum zoning that could be attained based on the comprehensive plan. So as far as protecting the property rights from an engineering design, it would be to design in a way to minimize and eliminate any impacts. And from a development standpoint, it's not trying to maximize everything that could happen, everything that would be allowed based on the current comprehensive plan.
The next question is, are the 15 acres abutting the proposal that were recently not passed by the council?
No, that is not part of the rezoning. That is intended to stay as is.
I didn't understand the question, I'm sorry to hear. What was the question again?
The 15 acres that I've referenced that is being pulled out of this parcel and not included as part of the development, it was a legacy request and is intended to stay as is.
So it'll say residential.
Farrow Road, Wilson Boulevard, and Hardscrabble are already overused. What do you plan to do to make sure the heavy traffic does not come through neighborhoods like Lake Elizabeth?
So I'm gonna get booed off the stage if I say traffic study again. So again, this is part of, and when we'll bring Mr. Stephen Staley, who is the county engineer for Richland County, we'll get him involved and meet with DOT and take all this into consideration. Again, typically we would go to DOT and say, what do we need to study in order to minimize this this project? Now, I mean, it would not be. I could not advocate for D.R. Horton to go in there and fix problems that aren't related to what they're trying to do, but sitting down with DOT, with Richland County, and trying to say, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't further hinder already bad problems is something that we would absolutely do.
The last one is actually a comment. Donna Mack would like to see a light being placed at Hardscrabble and Wilson due to the blind curve on 9 Lee.
As far as that would go into further to a traffic study. That would actually go into a signal warrant analysis, and that's a separate study that SCDOT would do.
So we'll take questions on the floor at this point. If there was a gentleman
I
here.
have one other question. The math on that shows instead of 43,500 square feet per acre, 20,000 square feet minimum on these individual lots, it doesn't seem to compute that you can get 216 units on 85 acres and still have ingress and egress roads and driveways and things of that sort. Has there already been a plan from Mr. Horton that shows how he can fit 216 lots on that particular 85 acres?
Yes, sir. And that will be in and I had that in my slides, and that'll be available to view tomorrow morning.
I'll piggyback off the other question. To piggyback off of the other lady question over there, infrastructure. I mean, Hardscrabble between Farrell Road and Wilson Road is already raggedy, and it's very narrow. And you talking about bringing more traffic on a narrow road? We got to consider widening roads. Like you say, they're not going to widen the bridge, but you don't. I mean, if a car breaks down, they can't even pull beside the road. They pull in the ditch already. And you talking about putting more traffic? We need to consider that also.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
No, I'm looking for you.
Yeah, so we're here in the front and then close the back. And then y'all think you're patient, we'll try to get your questions.
I have two questions. There's a farm in back of Hardscrabble Road. It's going to stay there, isn't it? Isn't going to be taken away in this land. The farm that has all the goats and chickens and things that I can hear all the time. I don't want that to go away.
I'm not sure exactly where you're referring to.
It's right in back of the, it's across the street from me, right from here to there. There's a farm with animals and, stuff. Somebody know?
I can speak to that because I think the term he used was legacy. But if you understand, my dad bought the property with my cousin in 1996, and he farmed it all that time. But he deceased. He died in 16 at 93. But one of his requests, which is the legacy part, in other words, what did Pop want? He said, my farm manager, who had helped him for 25 years, I want him to have a place, and he had made this request to raise his family and to have his sheep, was what you're hearing. And we have a couple of horses there. But the farm footprint, that 15 acres that Horton had agreed to cut out, is what you're talking about. It is going to remain. Now, Hector's a young man. If he passes away or his family chooses to move, we can't do that. But we made provisions to, yeah. But that's good. While I got the microphone, let me say one other thing. I'm assuming everybody here is a property owner. So you sort of look at our situation saying the county is telling you what you can do with your property. So they gave us the three options. Either go with the master plan, which I'm sure the master up there didn't create it, But that is to make it an industrial complex, have a factory, something that the 40 acres next door to it's already M1, I believe, something like that.
RSMD.
That allows that. And if you can imagine a big company, especially if they got a tax break, would pay us more for the property. So the family's looking at that. Then we looked at other developers who wanted to buy the property, but they wanted a higher density thing. Horton was the one who came to us and said, we'll honor your father's request to cut out the existing home for the farm manager, and we'll preserve a good bit of the property, including 2 nice ponds as a, I don't know the term y'all use, but in other words, the development would be allowed to use it, and that don't mean the neighbors can come in there and fish. Some of them do that now. But, you know, they're trying to preserve the natural beauty of that spot, which, you know, Pop, in 93, the land's important to people that were born before the Depression. You know, that's what enabled him to live from 75 years to 93 years was that piece of land. So we as the family looked at Horton's other people's proposal. You know, it could go apartments. I think the master plan is part of it be apartments, some service stations. You know, it's sort of like if you look at Killian Road, Clemson Road up through there. And we said, hey, Pop would rather go for the benefit of the community to have less dense, nicer homes. And you're talking about 2,000 square foot home. Y'all smart, y'all know what that's gonna cost. So we viewed that as an improvement to the community considering the alternative. She's laid out the alternative. She said, development is coming. Somebody's gonna buy that land for another purpose. And you know, I wish one of y'all had stepped up and said, I'll buy it and keep it a farm forever. That would have made Pop real happy. But we can't afford to do that. Yeah, I didn't have a meeting like this and say, okay. But anyway, appreciate the audience.
I just have one more
There you go.
question. If this happens, how far in the future will it be started? Will things start to happen?
So, likely not this year. So it would have to go through 2 more council readings, I believe, before it would be officially rezoned. And then once that happens, then you know, the traffic study is something that, like I said, cannot start until school gets in, because we have to and it can't just be the first day of school. It's probably 1st of September after Labor Day before we can begin that. And then you have the survey and the design process and the permitting process. So we're likely looking at first quarter 22 at the earliest.
But for actually starting to dig holes in the ground, is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm going to have to get my bags packed because I'm not staying there with that. That's just, I can just see the mess. And I've only been there a year and a half, but I know that I'll have to put money into my house to upgrade it to be in line with someone who wants to buy a new house that might have quartz countertops or something like that. So that's my issue. I just don't like the idea of my property value being down and of course the dust and the dirt and all the rest of it. So, okay, got my answer.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Forrest, and I am with the Lake Elizabeth community. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for their comments. I think that certainly our experience in Lake Elizabeth has taught us to be very skeptical of what we're told. And I think that rumor has gotten out in other communities too. So for you, just understanding that we are afraid of you because we don't trust what we're told. regulations get bent and kind of, massaged a little bit, and then they turn into something else. Hope is a useless, so take our questions, or certainly take my questions and comments from that perspective. I understand development is coming, I get that, but this is our time, and after this, our voices are going to be unheard if we don't take these opportunities, so thank you for that. So I had a couple of one clarification. I don't really understand what a legacy request is. Does that mean that upon the death of who, is that put in a person's name, and upon that person's death it automatically reverts back to you guys?
No, ma'am, that was something that I just talked about. Is basically Mr. Monster's father had requested that 15 acres be remained with a family friend or a farmer. And the legacy request is just something that I refer to that as no official.
So that's not a legal term?
No, ma'am, not at all.
Okay.
I apologize for that confusion.
Okay, so it was not deeded to them, it was not sold to you?
Correct.
In the first
no,
place?
That was just a phrase that I used
Gotcha.
to refer to the request from Mr. Monster's father, and I apologize for that confusion.
Okay.
His family, not important, or what individual
Right.
favor, you just said to me and sister, I would like y'all to take care of my farm
Okay.
or the person with mine. If we just went to the people and say, it's my bad for it, and it was his request, we're going to honor it if we can.
Okay. And so then it would totally be up to your family to, your discretion to do something with that property should you decide that you didn't want it anymore. Is that correct? I'm just trying to make sure that there is a clear line in the sand between your rights and their rights with that piece of property. Okay. Okay. Okay.
People like us that were wanted to his land and cut it the same way. That request came before his death.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. And my other, and again, this is just a clarification because I've been trying to do the math on this, and generally speaking, math is not my forte, but it still seems that if we're looking at 350 acres, 215 acres, is that correct? What are we looking at? 115 acres?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but that, with the 15 acres that are taken out of that 130, that's 115 acres, is that correct?
No, it's 96, 94.
Okay. Okay, all right, well, so forget that. So, as associated with that, though, you're saying that that 45% is going to be open space, untouched, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and so then you mentioned a swimming pool and a clubhouse. Mm-hmm. Is that part of that percentage that's going to be untouched?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so then the clubhouse and the swimming pool are going to be taken away from the available land to build houses on?
Correct.
Okay, so can you clarify for us how many houses per acre? That's going to be factor in the roadways that have to be considered and the sewer systems and all that. But when you kind of sift through all of that, how many houses per acre will you be putting on whatever number of acres you're talking about?
So it's 216 houses. Again, we're looking at 94 acres total. That a portion of that, approximately 45%, and give me a little bit of grace on that because again, we're at the preliminary stage, is going to be untouched and dedicated as open space. Richland County has an open space code, and so therefore the density is what is defined in the open space code, but we're just clustering it to a smaller footprint on the acreage. Okay, so, ma'am? So candidly, that we've gone through multiple iterations on the sketch plan.
I just want to move it clear. I'm going to give it to you.
So there, on the notes, there was 204, and we've referenced 216, and I apologize for that confusion. Please go with what's on your note. As I've gone through multiple iterations on this, we've done preliminary layout, we've tweaked it, we've tried to minimize the footprint, and make it as efficient as possible. So I have probably 6 or 7 different layout versions in my head, and I apologize for that. So please use the 204 that's on that thing.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay, and then just one more follow-up, just clarification on what Mr. Price said, because I wasn't understanding all of that. So RSE requires workforce housing, which is higher density? Or are you saying, I'm trying to understand how you go from RSE, which my understanding was there were fewer houses, to RSE with that kind of level of density. That's a big difference.
What I was saying, RSE. Grab the mic, please. RSE is the designation they're requesting now, and that allows 2.2 units per acre. What I was referencing was according to the comprehensive plan, which is a guide for development in Richland County, within the economic development corridor, while it primarily is looking for industrial type uses, it also, as a secondary use, looks at workforce type housing, higher density within there. So what they're requesting isn't higher density. What we were just saying is, according to the comprehensive plan, that's what's recommended. But what they have requested and what was given first reading kind of goes against the guidelines of the comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan and the zoning code are not the rules.
No, again, the comprehensive plan is a guideline for how development should take place along certain areas. And again, because when doing the comprehensive plan, it's kind of broadly painted in certain areas. So for example, what we've identified along this stretch as an economic development corridor, you could say it's broadly painted. However, when a request comes in and we have a chance to look at it and kind of narrow in on it, as the Planning Commission stated, that is just not an appropriate area, and it's probably not able to be developed for industrial due to there's no access off of I-77 where you would want trucks to be able to have access. It's just, it wasn't appropriate for that location. So again, the comprehensive plan is a strong guide, but ultimately, once you go back and you look at an area, you may feel that that's not the appropriate designation, and you may go against the comprehensive plan.
Okay, I don't have a question, it's more of a concern. I live probably closest to Wilson Boulevard. I live on Wade Drive and Hardscrabble Road, so my house sits on the corner lot. And I understand that the development is coming. I understand about the roads being widened, but my concern is my property being taken. I ride down on the other side of Hardscrabble Road rarely because there's so much traffic, even with the widening. And I look at how that road has consumed so much of those homeowners' property, all the way up to their houses. That's my concern. I have small children, and I do not want a highway or a roadway built up on my home, like on the other end of Hardscrabble. So I need to know that I'm protected in that sense with my property being taken away and my children put in danger because the roadway comes so close up onto my home. That's my concern. Thank you for sharing your concern. Some of these concerns are legitimate concerns. They all are very legitimate concerns. We just don't have all the answers for them because as development takes place, there are certain things that are really out of all of our controls when it comes to widening roads and things of that nature. But it will be something that we would have to monitor together and keep a pulse on to continue to have conversations. And that is the pledge here, that these are conversations that are not being had just isolated, but they're ongoing. So we'll take Ms. Roach, and then we'll come back up front to the second row here.
I would like to know what is the result of this meeting. Does this mean that you will take the input and go to the next council meeting, and there will be 2 more votes? How many more times this will come up?
So there are 2 more votes. So the objective for this meeting is to hear from you all tonight. I've been taking notes. I will go back and watch this again. And then if there's more conversation that needs to be had as far as you all have some additional concerns, Ms. Forrest can speak to this. At Lake Elizabeth, we had 8 meetings. We had 8 meetings, and I deferred the development twice because we just needed to have more conversation to talk about what was going to take place. So after this meeting, depending on what the pulse is, that will determine, because we'll have a council meeting next week. And then there's an additional another council meeting at the end of the month, and we're on recess for the month of August. So essentially, this could be passed by the end of the month.
So you're going to determine from what we're saying today how you're going to vote?
Yes, I will determine either how I'm going to vote, if I'm going to defer. And if I state that I will defer, what happens is that no action will take place on this particular item for 30 days, which means that it will come back to council in 30 days. It'll appear back on the agenda in 30 days. And so I will have a good idea. I already have a pretty decent idea where this is going, but I want to hear from you all.
Now, will you be back into the building for the next meeting?
Great question, Ms. Roach. So yesterday, during a special call meeting, we voted to go back in session in chambers starting on the 13th, which is next week. So yes, council will be live and in living color starting next week. It is limited seating. Our capacity is 70 for the chamber. That includes staff as well as the council members. And we are asking that everyone, when you come in, that you wear your face mask the entire time, that you're in the facility, just because we're in a close quarter for a long period of time. So yes, we'll be back.
One last question. Will it be open for conversation from the community?
It is my understanding that when we go back in session, that we will go back to business as usual. Mr. Brown, our administrator, is here. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
So we will go back. We also, the administrators put some items in place which will allow for community engagement from that if you're unable to attend, we will still have ways that the community can still be engaged into our meeting process remotely. So we had a question up front.
This is more of a comment along the same lines. And when I started out with this, and I was talking to my dad about it when I first read about it in the paper, and he's like, well, what would you like to see go there? Which I think is an interesting question, but because like you're saying, there's going to be development. And I came in here not knowing how it was going to be, what you were asking for. Were you asking for high density, which you're not, medium density, which you're not, low density, which you're not, and there's rural residential, but this residential estate seems to be the lesser of some of the evils. However, I think, and I don't know that, I don't understand, when you tell us it's a foregone conclusion, which is kind of subline of what just was said, which is a little bit frustrating that we're here doing this, but at the same time, I feel like and the lady with the little children in the streets, and I think the resounding thing that we're saying is the traffic is really messed up now, what are you going to do about it? And for you to say, well, it's probably not going to happen that we have a conversation with the Department of Transportation prior to voting, I find that maddening and just a little bit irresponsible of the county not to try to think about this critically. Whether D.R. Horton needs to acquire more land in order to make another point of ingress and egress that's not a Hardscrabble Road thing. And I feel like if you came to us with that in place and we could see it, that you might not have so much concern and fear. That people might understand a little bit better, but it seems like it's a roadblock, and that we're not, no pun intended, but we're not going to get, there's no way we're going to get that. And I think that is, and I don't know what's happened in Lake Elizabeth. I know it's been, and I don't live there, but I know that it's been very difficult for those people and that they don't trust and that there is, and maybe that's bleeding out into the rest of us at this point. But for just to say, no, we can't do that, I don't understand why not. I mean, it seems to me that you guys have the resources to do that, and I think that you could probably get a lot more people on board with it if we had some sort of an idea that we're not going to be basically, we don't want to live in a city or we would have moved there.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why you can't figure that out a little bit on the front end.
Well, earlier, I made mention that I had made a request
For a traffic study.
for a traffic study.
But that doesn't give us resolution. That's just a traffic study, and that doesn't do anything.
It's not, we're not gonna, I don't think that we can get a resolution prior to, and I say I don't think, because I'm not certain, that we can get a resolution before development comes, but I think that once we have a traffic study in place, we know how many cars are coming through that area, and if that existing road can hold what is currently there as well as what's coming. So
I just hear that as the main concern, and then and it's not being addressed, and it doesn't seem. I don't understand the traffic study, but at that point it's already been rezoned, and I do agree that this is gentler and kinder and more peaceful than what could be with the comprehensive plan in place, which is an industrial type factory setting. But at the same time, I feel like the main concern here is based largely on traffic, and that there is no answer to that, and it doesn't seem like there's really been an attempt to make one, and that I find frustrating. Anyway.
your point is noted, and we hear it. Thank you.
Yes, I am a resident that is right on Hardscrabble Road, and I would just like to say in regards to the traffic study, I think that Mr. Rayburn said it would be a study like from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then in the evening like from 4 to 6 did I get that correct?
That's correct. That's the time where we would count existing traffic counts. Okay. That's the time we would collect data during those times.
Okay, and I would just like to say, as a resident that is right on Hardscrabble Road, I don't think that those time frames reflect all of the traffic. Because when I'm up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., all the traffic that is coming through that road from other neighborhoods from off of Wilson Road, that is coming from neighborhoods off of Hardscrabble Road, I just don't think that those times will give a true reflection of what is really the amount of traffic that is coming through there through the AM hours. I mean, I just don't. And in regards to the traffic study, I know that you said that they would be taking into consideration traffic lights and maybe some lanes that could be merged into. Where would that be? Before the bridge on before 77? After you cross over 77, going down through the curve. I mean, I've had people, I live right on a corner, up on the stop sign because they are just going through there so fast. I've had people in my yard from accidents. This has been at 2 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 8 a.m. But see, the traffic study wouldn't be able to get all of that because they won't be there. And in regards to that, I would just have to say that I'm with my neighbor, yes, that, this is just a serious matter. And I know that growth is coming, but for this to be taken seriously, I've seen people hurt from being up on the stop sign and just all of that into consideration. And like she said, it's a nightmare just trying to get out, trying to get in. As Ms. Barron said, someone let her in. But I don't think that you realize the magnitude of how it affects the people that is currently living there. And I would have the same concerns as the young lady in the back about small children. I have a child, but thank God that I sit on an acre and I'm almost at the back of my acre.
I have one more question. I'm sorry to ask this before. Does this mean that if you do this study for county goes to approve, does it set a precedent for other parts of one in that?
Yes, and I would say, as your council person, yes, it would. But again, It does set a precedence, but the precedence is being set right now by how we move forward in development. So whether it's a negative one, that's still to be determined. This could be it could be a precedent that is set forth that, okay, this becomes this is how we do business. This is a best practice. So it depends on how you look at it. But I use Jasmine Place to make my decision based upon the comp plan said one thing, but the community looks totally different.
As a council person, would you practice before you change the zoning, or you change the zoning and then see what you get?
Oh no, sir. That's what we're here for.
You can do the traffic study before you do that.
So school's not.
It has to be voted. You really don't have the information to vote for something.
So I will go back to the statement that I just made about 5 minutes ago. I know where this conversation is going, and I felt comfortable about it. And at this moment, a traffic study is going to bring some more peace for me. So at this point, I'm not going to make a statement to say I'm voting this way, but I hope that you hear what I'm saying without me saying it. But I am taking this very seriously, as I do this charge that has been given to me by the people that voted. So out of all the things, there are many people that disagree with me having town hall meetings to even have conversations like this. So I hear you, and it's taken very seriously, sir.
It just seems like we're passing legislation and then we'll read it afterwards to see what.
No, sir. No, sir. That's not what we're doing here.
Councilwoman, we have a question here.
Sure.
Yeah, you said what we're doing here, and I'm confused because we canceled Bible study to be here. And I came here for information, but the gentleman had no information to give me because I'm one, like a person, I like to see things in writing. Don't tell me what you're gonna do, write it down, give it to me so I can hold you accountable for what you say you're gonna do. And one, I'm concerned because we're putting the cart before the horse. We're gonna build a neighborhood and not fix the road, or not get the road ready. The road should have been the first thing we should be talking about. It's raggedy. Have you drove down it lately? We got potholes. It is not a good road. You know about, and then you don't tell me, we'll do a traffic study. When we start building, then maybe DOT may come in and fix the road, whatever. I don't want to go through that. And I'm sure nobody else here wants to go through that. If you're going to have a conversation, have it before you make any votes, so that you can hear what the people have to say. Because this isn't right. You're going to vote and then, oh, well, you know what? Take it or leave it. That's the attitude that I'm getting right now. Take it or leave it.
I would like to say, sir, and I'm going to continue to say the same thing. I've been very clear that I would not cast a vote until I have the information. And to your point about not having the information, that's something that he planned to have a presentation. He has a full-blown PowerPoint that would have been available, but there was technical challenges that we had tonight. So we would just ask for grace on that one. But Dr. Thompson has made arrangements to make sure that this document is available on our website. And then Brian is also going to email this document to everyone who's in attendance who's put their name down today. So I would like to stand by the fact that, as I've said from day one, I'm here to serve, and that's not a tagline. That's a lifestyle.
I have a question here.
More of a concern. I'm concerned about, I am right on Hardscrabble Road. When it rains extremely, water comes into my yard as is. And I heard you say that there will be some discoloration in the water once you all get started. Are you talking about on-site discoloration for that place, or would it be within the neighborhood? And Councilwoman, I appreciate you being honest. We all know that it's going to happen. regardless, but when they start widening the street, I, for one, want fair market value for my property.
So to answer your question about discoloration, yes, that is the intent is for that to stay on site and be treated on site. That's what all the design standards are for. To comment a little bit further, and I sincerely hear your frustration. Don't understand it as a member of the community, but I do understand it as someone who deals with all the different organizations and governing agencies. So Hardscrabble Road and Wilson Road are both owned and maintained by the DOT. Richland County does not have any jurisdiction over them. So that's part of the reason why we have to involve the DOT into that process and get them to come in and help us with the improvements to the roadway. So I would just say, you know, as far as widening the roadways and whatnot, that is something that is fully driven by SCDOT. The traffic study is something that's fully driven by SCDOT in cooperation with Richland County, but Richland County has zero authority over the state roads.
We have one here.
I actually I want to ask you a favor, and then I have a question. I asked them when you're doing your traffic study that you take into account the lessons learned from the Clemson side of Farrell Road and try to avoid what they've been doing, because that's been a 3, 4, 5 year project and they're not much further along than when they started. So I asked that you take that into account. My second question is, there's a lot of land that comes out on Power Road and flexes all the way around to Hardscrabble Road, behind that dumpster place or whatever that is on the corner of Hardscrabble and Powell. Do we need to be prepared for that to be developed as well? Because it is a huge lot of land, and the way we're talking with the development aspect is going to get developed at some point. Are you all looking at that land as well, or just the land that you're talking about tonight?
The only land I'm aware of is what we're talking about tonight.
Okay. All right.
So here is, we talked about best practices earlier. The best practice that I like to set forth for our district is that when there is a rezoning, we will convene, as we're doing tonight. So if it comes across my desk that plot of land on Power Road is up for rezoning, those same signs that you saw put up before, that mass media that we did to get you all here, we'll do it all over again. As soon as we put a pin in this one tonight, I'm starting all over for one in Killian, on Killian Road. So this is something that I'm committed to, because I do take your input very seriously.
Yeah, Ms. Barrett, can we ask you to hold off on your vote or delay your vote until after the DOT study?
You can ask me that. Yes, you can ask me that.
Well, we need, I'd like some commitment. You know what we've had in the past, and the best predictor of the future is what's going on with us in the past. And I think County Council is sort of giving us the shaft, okay? And that's no disrespect to you, okay? But Hardscrabble Road is a very dangerous road, okay? And if you're talking about putting, I don't care if you put 50 homes in there, it's still a dangerous road, okay? And Mr. Rabin, we'd like for you to ride that road so you can see from yourself. If you ride from Wilson Boulevard and past Lake Elizabeth's entrance, you know, it might give you some concern or some food for thought, okay? Boom.
Yes, I would like to ask a question. Are you just thinking about homes for the development? Is it just homes that you're gonna? My question is to the councilwoman. Are you I know development is coming, but are you just thinking about homes and nothing else? Like restaurants, grocery stores. So I won't have to go out of my zip code to shop.
So I agree with you. Let me say this. I'm not thinking about any of this. It comes a part of the job. So since we know that people want to build and they're interested in developing land, then I'm forced to have this conversation. I would love, and I totally agree with you, and I've said this during the time that I was running for office and even now in office, I would love for us to be able to live and be able to shop and be able to go to the grocery store and eat right where we live. I would love that. But when I sat down and met with our economic development director, one of the things that he says is that rooftops drive commercial business. And so, whereas this is a huge conversation that we're having about 204 homes, it could trickle down to a dry cleaners or to a restaurant because the homes are there. So it is something that is, development is connected, whether it's residential or commercial, and I totally agree with you. I have to go out of my zip code to do everything. And I would love for us to further develop. What I've learned also is this area that we're talking about is the most underdeveloped area in our district. It's the most underdeveloped, but it's the most desirable. So as we continue to have these conversations of such, we're having conversations with developers that develop commercial property. Send me an email, tell me tonight. You want a Highway 55, you want a Hardee's, a McDonald's, Burger King, but all of it starts with a conversation. And so I would love to keep those conversations going outside of this.
Hello, I want to just thank you for your time tonight. And my question is kind of about the infrastructure and the traffic study in the area. Coming off of Hardscrabble to get on Farrell Road to go up to say the Kroger's or something, it's a nightmare. And it's very hard to get up there. They've done a lot of expansion in that area. So also with people, get to the lady's point about the times, there are people that are traveling going to plants to go work. So they might be going to work at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning at other areas. So like, is that the traffic study, is that going to be kind of like off of Wilson Boulevard, kind of picking up that extra traffic? Because people are sometimes trying to cut through to get the shortest path to get to work.
Yeah, so when I went to, when I was going through my presentation, I was kind of going through the typical things, the typical starting points of what goes into a traffic study, what goes into the design considerations for storm drainage and downstream. Again, all the roads out here are DOT roads, and so everything will be coordinated with DOT in the terms of defining what the scope of the traffic study is. It could be, there's, that to your point, ma'am, the 7 to 9 and the 4 to 6, those are AM peak hour. There are portions of that traffic study that are 12 hours counts, 24-hour counts. All that is driven by the DOT. So I don't want to speak for them as they're not represented here, but there are different customizable types of, the DOT has the crash data. The DOT has fatality data. They know kind of where their critical areas are, and they take that into account when they go to define a scope for a traffic study. The other thing I would like to try to put everyone's mind at ease, and I know that's probably going to be a futile effort, but the reason that we're here is to rezone one upzone from RU to RSE. That does not, the only thing we have requested is a rezoning that will allow a slightly higher density than what is currently allowed to make the development work for the developer. It can be developed today as it is zoned today under the same open space code with still 150, 160 plus lots without rezoning. But we still have to have the traffic study. We still have to have the environmental. We still have to have the design. We still have to have the downstream analysis. The rezoning is only to give the developer what they need to make it work. Nothing is approved as far as going to get built. When I tell you first quarter 2022, that's if everything goes right. So, I mean, there's still a ton of design, of review, of all kind of different things. So the rezoning is simply a slight increase in the allowable density, which again, as we've discussed, is much less than what the comprehensive plan calls for. There's still so much that has to go into it and so much other work that has to be done and considerations that have to be made. But again, it could go today without the rezoning, but still require everything that we're talking about.
Ms. Barron, you mentioned that you have another project just like this on the Killian Road side. There's a large section of property over there that backs up to Spears Creek. It's the same creek that we're backing up to that we're talking about now. How much of that property will be dumping sewage and silt into Spears Creek?
So that's the Killian Road project that I was speaking of, is not that plot of land that you're talking about. I'm literally talking about where Kroger is, all that property around Kroger, that's where I'm talking about.
Well,
yeah, that's the part that I'm talking about. And so to your point, everything related to zoning does not come to council. So if it's already zoned for a particular use and the developer is good with that use, they can build and council knows nothing about it. So rezoning comes to us.
How could it be zoned for a particular use if it was all trees a year ago?
Well, all plots of land has a zoning code. Whether it has trees on it or houses on it, it's zoned for something already. Okay. It has a use already. So we have a question from the social media.
Yes, the question is from Natalie Welk. Why can't they develop with the current RU designation?
Were you clear on the question? I heard a little mumbling. Okay, just want to make sure.
So this goes into the economics of it. I mean, as I mentioned, the RU designation does allow for the development. It does allow for the open space code and clustering the density, but basically land has a cost. Mr. Mosser has chosen to forego maximum value to try to keep something comparable to the development. But the land still has a cost. The infrastructure has a cost. There's no reason to do it if you're not able to make money doing it as far as business goes. Otherwise, there's no reason to do it. The additional, the upzone in the RSE allows those additional lots, additional density. Again, we're talking, the numbers escape me. We can do the calculations if you want to email me. Feel free. We're going from the high 100s to 204. But that gives them the ability for it to be a financially feasible investment.
For me, I don't know what low density, high density is. So can somebody explain that to me? And as well, what does it mean for my property value? Will it go up or go down? And my taxes, how does that affect all that?
So, I mean, low density, medium density, high density. I know that RSE, what the rezoning request for is 2.2 units per acre. As Mr. Price had mentioned, RSMD was, I believe, was 5.1. RSHD is a higher unit count per acre, and RSLD would be between 2.2 and 5.1. So it's basically, there's a different zoning designations. As far as property values, I'm not a real estate agent, I'm an engineer, but part of what goes into selling a house is comps. So I mean, if there are houses that are listed at a certain price point, then it sounds like that would be comparable based on the square foot. But that is an engineer speaking, not a real estate agent, and I can't speak to the taxes.
Councilwoman, this is a takeaway that I would ask you that goes beyond the scope of this meeting. Since we know that development is coming, would it be possible for us to have more creative collaboration as a community to get more input about what the ideal development would be that we would seek as residents. Because this is coming to us after the fact. This is something that we're living with after the fact, that it's now being brought to us because it's been brought to you, so now we're being made aware of it. But if we really want to create the kind of community that we want to live in, we need to have a plan in advance. And so the opportunity for us to discuss where we live, what opportunities look like for us, and the kinds of projects that we would like to see come to our community so that we can attract them and thereby create the community we want to live in, that we can feel more informed, more part of the process, and less like we're being told, this is what's coming, prepare. Thank you.
So I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a wonderful idea. These town hall meetings were a thought that that's something that we could do, but the unfortunate thing is that it comes to me, and the first thing I do is want to come to you when it comes to me. But I love the idea of us creating some type of forum or maybe a survey or something, that we can start with a survey and then create some focus groups for our district. I am open to it, and I think it's a wonderful idea, and I can commit to that.
Okay, I realize I'm kind of belaboring this, but staying as Mr. and Ms. Wake stated a minute ago on the phone, leaving it at RU still allows you to build, and it allows you to build but fewer homes, correct? Okay, so if you think about that, but then you think about currently you're wanting to put 216 homes up on approximately 63 acres. That seems high density to me. That's like 3.5 homes per acre. That's a lot. And so, you know, in addition to the traffic issues, we've got environmental issues that we haven't even talked about. I mean, I understand that you have done, or you're planning on doing an environmental study. Has it been done?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So my question is twofold with that, and that is, when that is done, is that something that we would have access to look at that study? Because that, for me, that is a tremendous factor in all of this.
Yeah, once the traffic study is submitted to the county to review, that is, at that point, that becomes a foiable document.
Okay, and the environmental study will become, okay.
That's right.
Well, when are you planning on having that done?
That all goes into how this rezoning goes.
Okay, so, but, okay, then maybe this is for you, Ms. Bell. If it's not rezoned and they can do whatever they want to do, then there would be no issue related, and from your perspective, no issue related to an environmental study. Is that correct? Okay, so if the property were not rezoned but stayed RU and they decided to go with fewer homes, then an environmental study would be a moot issue. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. I would ask you to consider leaving it at RU. I know you guys aren't going to make as much money as you want to make, but if you're really wanting to work with the communities here, and you've heard our concerns, 2 homes per acre is a whole lot better than 3.5 homes per acre, and the ripple effect that many houses on an acre of land has. So I hope you'll reconsider that. You can still make some money, and I think that it will be less environmentally harmful to us. It certainly is going to increase traffic, but there's going to be a significant reduction in that increase in traffic. So it seems to me that that would be a reasonable thing for you to take back and consider and have some conversations with other folks who are involved in this. Just kind of, again, based on what folks here are saying. We're not saying you can't develop. We're saying if we're talking smart development, be smart. And that includes considering us and being respectful of the people who have value in their homes here, who don't want to move, who can't move, but who are absolutely going to be impacted by this, what I would consider a medium to high density development that you're talking about.
I agree, and to your point, again, as the engineer, the economics of it are between the property owner, the seller, and the developer. From a density standpoint, you're talking of, you're again, what we talked about, you're condensing the footprint of what you're developing, but your units per acre are still what they are. The undisturbed open space that's being left as part of a county requirement has to be deeded to the HOA and completely put in perpetuity to be undisturbed. It cannot come back and be disturbed later. So that will forever be undisturbed as part of that development. So therefore, the density, the units per acre, while they are clustered, and the amount of land that's being disturbed is minimized for those environmental impacts, the density and the units per acre are still 2.2 in the RSC designation. I think Mr. Mosser had a question.
Point to two things. The environmental study, I know, is underway because they sent an engineer to interview me and talk about what the use of the environmental study, which is paid for by Horton, is already underway because I know that because I've had contact with those engineers questioning me about the use of the land before this. Now, we've owned or controlled it since 1991, 92, and we knew the farmer who had it before that, and it was a poultry farm. It's always been that for as long as I can remember. But they ask questions like, has there ever been a chemical dump here? Did you guys dump oil out there? Have you ever had a fire at this location? You know, these kinds of things. So I know the environmental impact study has begun. Now, where it is in the process, I don't know. I had a call from the engineer even as early as today, but I just didn't make contact with him. So that's another thing where I'd say from our standpoint, Horton was the most responsible of the folks who were potential buyers of it. The other question I had, somebody was talking about the traffic. And I agree with you because I run that road too. You get people passing you on the yellow line and threatening you and all this kind of stuff. That's a Leon Lott issue in the sense that you're right, DOT runs it, but the highway patrol doesn't patrol it. But I guarantee you it wouldn't take but a call or two to Mr. Lott and say, look, we got some dangerous issues on these curves. These guys that pass you on the hill on the double yellow line, how about give a few of them a few tickets and you see how quick your traffic might improve there. I think that's all I wanted to say. But y'all asked some wonderful questions. It's very thoughtful. But the family has put a lot of thought into it so far. And some of those same concerns you had were ours on the front end.
And ma'am, to your point, why can't we develop it as our, go ahead.
That's the other question. I think it's existing would be 184 houses as opposed to 204 or whatever. You know, it's less than 25 houses difference between what it could be and what they're asking for. The big difference is the fact that they're going to leave a lot of it undisturbed. Mm-hmm. And the other folks, they want free reign of it, you know.
And again, the fact of the matter is that, the developers go into this is an investment for them. This is how they make their living. I know they have bad reputations of being big bad developers. I understand that completely. But this is every development is a investment for them. So it has to meet certain markers in order for them to do it. And the density that is done on RU just simply doesn't work. So if we do not get the RSC designation, then the result would be that it doesn't move forward as currently proposed, and then it's back to the drawing board, and it could possibly, come in with an apartment complex or industrial or what other zonings are in that comp plan.
Okay. Will additional schools be built? That's the last question.
So that is definitely a school district question. I do know from the conversation that we had with Lake Elizabeth in the past, Keenan High School can withstand growth. there, so that's not a challenge. And I got that information from the school district. So I can't answer if there'll be additional schools and all that. That's out of our hands. What I want to do before we close and everyone go home for tonight, I first want to thank you all for the opportunity just to have this conversation. I think it's healthy. I think it's something that we need to continue to have as we build in District 7. And although many people have gone, I want to say it and go on record. When I say that development is coming, it's coming not because I'm bringing it. It's coming because they want to be here. And so because they want to be here, I want us to be prepared for it. I do. I want us to be prepared. I want people to know that if they want to build in District 7, they got to come and talk to y'all. I want that to be the standard. And so as we conclude this meeting, I want to remind you that I am here to represent you. Whereas this gentleman I just met for the first time tonight. I've talked to him on the phone, but I just met him. Do you live in District 7? He doesn't live in District 7. I represent District 7. So whereas I'm not defending this development, I'm not taking a stance on this development one way or the other, I too, like you, are trying to get information so that we can make an informed decision, so that I can make an informed vote that is representative of our district. And I really hope that you all will take that to heart as you continue to think about the conversation that we've had tonight. This will stay on our YouTube page. It'll be on our Facebook page. Go back, share it with other individuals who were not here tonight. And each one of you should have gotten from me from the table here, my card. If there's a question that comes up or you want to have further conversation, please reach out to me. Because again, I'm here to serve you, and that's not cliche. That's real talk. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
On that email, and I know I didn't raise my hand, maybe include to let them know that if they want changes to the role, to contact their House of Representatives or our senators that represent us in our area. Because Richmond County has nothing